Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Welcome to our last lecture of computational neuroscience. I hope you have enjoyed your time so far, and today we will be discussing a brief overview of what we have covered and basically take you through briefly some of the current research topics in computational neuroscience from a very biological angle. There are many other topics that we can discuss which has to do with AI and machine learning related fields. Here we will talk more about, be grounded more in terms of biological neurons and biologically plausible computation and so on. So overall in this course, in the first part, we have discussed about action potentials, and we have done modeling of neurons. And so when we talk of models of neurons, we have done it at multiple levels, that is either as a system, or as a spiking biophysical model. What I mean by system is let us say like a linear time invariant system plus non-linearity and so on. And then the simpler spiking models, that is like the leaky integrate and fire kind of neuron. These ones have elaborate ion channels in them to model specific spike timing and also incorporate specific specific types of channels if required, and how they affect spike timing and so on. So along with the systems model, we have connected to the second part where we have looked at receptive fields of neurons, that is on the encoding aspects. So here we have looked at how we can use a linear time invariant model to represent stimuli and represent the receptive field of the neuron and also represent the neuron indirectly. So from the linear model, we know that we cannot go on further beyond the second order, maybe because of the huge amount of data that is required. We discussed the introduction of information theory in the receptive field world, and we looked at information maximally informative dimensions, and this method provided us with another approach to looking at what aspects of the stimulus space a neuron is encoding. Similarly, we have looked at decoding by neurons, that is going from the spike train to the stimulus, and we have approached it from the perspective of discrimination, from either through statistical approaches, or we have also looked at some biologically plausible methods of discrimination based on spike distance metrics, that like the Van Rossum distance. So all this, so the things that we have talked about so far are all sort of ideas in isolation, that is, either it is one stimulus, its representation in the spike train, or from the spike train to getting back the stimulus, reconstructing the stimulus, or saying which stimulus of the two might be present, and so on. It is devoid of an overall overall um, behavior incorporated in this whole scheme of things. So these receptive fields or decoding based on spike trains can be combined with behavior where, let us say, we have online learning, and so plasticity can be included in there, and that is, we have looked at the principles by which plasticity occurs, short term plasticity, long term plasticity, and how they are implemented in neural models and synaptic models. And then we looked at examples of these implementations. So again, even in this case, when we looked at plasticity and examples, we have looked at one aspect in isolation only. That is, okay, this synapse is plastic, it has this input and this particular output, how does it change? Not at an overall level, overall systems kind of level, like overall organism level. So now in the more recent past, people have been looking at more simpler organisms, which is like the zebrafish or C. elegans worm, and people are trying to understand or quantify behavior as a whole from the entire set of sensory inputs and the entire set of motor outputs in an environment. So the easy, or rather what allows one to quantify the overall behavior of the entire organism is the simplicity of these organisms. However, these approaches are extremely instructive to uncover underlying principles. So in general, as you have probably gotten an idea so far, that it is, if we talk of some particular sensory input up to an output, it is essentially a process of sensory motor transformation. So that is, we have some sensory input that is getting gradually represented at higher and higher levels in the sensory system. Finally, there is some other requirement of the system based on the sensory input, and based on that there is some decision making, and based on that there is a set of motor plan that is executed, which is implemented by the motor circuitry. So this whole process as a whole can be studied not in higher organisms currently, because we do not have access to all the data simultaneously. However, we do have access to all the data in, for example, Drosophila or C. elegans or zebrafish, and so here computational neuroscience has a huge role to play in terms of covering this entire process as a whole and understanding the system as a whole, not things in isolation. And this also will allows us to again apply theoretical principles in this transformation, as we have discussed in our encoding and decoding aspect, where we have looked at the emergence of receptive fields, we have looked at emergence of learning rules, and so on. Here also the overall behavior we can probably have through those principles, have an overall behavioral strategy emerging, or the overall how this system should be designed. That kind of strategy can emerge based on these studies. So again, as mentioned here, that the concept of optimality in some sense remains one of the leading postulated design principles underlying behavioral strategies as well as information processing in general. So this part we had covered in our previous lectures, and so now it is about and about using similar principles to look at behavioral strategies, that is starting from the information processing, that is the sensory input, right up to the motor output, that is the entire sensory motor transformation. So this was mentioned as one of the important current topics in computational neuroscience by Adrian Fairhall and Christian Makens in a recent commentary paper or in Nature Communications. So the other points that were mentioned are the ideas of feed forward versus recurrent network model. So often even in our case, most of the examples of networks that we have looked at it as feed forward networks, because based on feed forward networks, for example in the visual system, a large amount of understanding of the brain and parallel visual computer vision systems have developed. So a lot of the visual system can be explained with feed forward processing. However, the brain, as we know, with more and more experiments, we clearly know that it is largely recurrent in nature, that there is tremendous amount of recurrence within each layer of representation. And the why they are there and how they are implementing the stimulus independent internal dynamics, or how they allow systems of neural systems to adapt. These are open. These are some of the open questions in computational neuroscience, and the theoretical principles that can be applied in terms of what processing such recurrent networks can achieve, that also needs attention. So these are some of the ideas that one can look into in terms of comparing feed forward and recurrent networks, and ultimately it will be about combining the two together, because ultimately the brain is also feed forward in nature while being recurrent within each layer, extreme recurrence within each layer. So further, there are more important points. Two of them are obviously we have been dealing with them continuously, that is dealing with high dimensional data. There is not much to explain to you in terms of the importance or of this topic. That is, with more and more time, we are getting more and more advanced technologies to access activity of neurons, or even at the synaptic level or spine level, at a huge at a very good spatial resolution and temporal resolution. And so these are providing huge amount of data simultaneously at multiple levels. And it is not even just about fine time scale and fine spatial scale. It is also in the coarser spatial scale also we are getting huge amount of high dimensional data in, let us say, fMRI or even EEG. So a multi-level, multimodal high dimensional data is now emerging from all the work that is going on with experimental neurosciences, especially in animal work and some in humans. And so we need newer and newer computational tools to handle these kind of high dimensional data and treating them in order to extract hidden features from these kind of high dimensional data. And what should be the principles that we apply, or how can we derive what principles are governing the dynamics of such high dimensional data systems. Of course, learning and plasticity are always going to be probably the most important part of neuroscience, because that is what makes the brain unique, the way it adapts, the extreme adaptability that the brain has, the neural systems have, and we are only scratching the surface in terms of biological computation and biological learning and plasticity. And so far in this course, and usually in any theoretical neuroscience course, we talk of learning and plasticity based on only activity, input-output activity. And while it is true, it is all based on input-output activity, we are looking at the plasticity rules based on directly the input-output activity, but we bypass a number of processes that are happening inside the neuron uh, in terms of behind learning and plasticity uh, based on those input-output activities. For example, there are multiple genes, multiple proteins that are synthesized and play a role in all of these plasticity kind of questions that we have addressed. However, the computational models of them or the biochemistry is not incorporated in these plasticity rules, which there are some work, there is some work along those lines, but mostly they are devoid of that particular aspect. And there are many questions that can be framed by incorporating, let us say, the effect of calcium in long-term plasticity by including the different transcription factors, the downstream events that happen from the concentration of calcium, and leading to finally um, uh, transcription and translation and basically synthesis of plasticity related proteins in the system. So those the modeling, the computational modeling of those aspects are largely missing, and so those can be taken up as future areas of work. Finally, we come to another important factor that so far in our discussions we have rarely talked about state dependence, and state dependence is a more general term. It actually can be used for many other factors, let us say age, sex, and of course the other kind of situation, state dependence of all the processing. And so these aspects we have are missing, and often in computational models we are not taking into account the different states of the animal. If it is awake and behaving, what other situations can be at play, like many cognitive factors may be at play, maybe hunger on a particular day, or maybe an interaction that it has had in that particular day, the animal that we are talking about, or on which we are conducting awake behaving experiments. It is not the same person, just as we are not the same person every day. So these kind of factors are not at all incorporated in any of our work that we have discussed, and it is indeed difficult, but that neuronal coding is in actually dynamic process, and it is heavily influenced by exactly what we are doing and exactly what our history has been, and so on. And these can become an important study, because these become important when we talk of brain computer interfaces and so on, because if the coding is dynamic based on the state which we are unaware of, then to have a brain computer interface to perform correctly and perfectly, we need to incorporate such state dependence into those models, into those decoding algorithms, and so on. So with this these few topics, I will leave you to ponder upon further ideas, further ways in which you can tackle problems in computational neuroscience. You yourself may have some particular desire to work on a particular problem, and we will be happy to discuss with you if you have such ideas in mind. And I hope you have overall enjoyed our computational neuroscience course and have taken most of the material to heart, and will be going forward with research in these directions and go on to be computational neuroscientists. Thank you.